31, verses 1 through 5, and then verses 15 through 16. Hear the word of the Lord. In thee, O Lord, do I seek refuge. Let me never be put to shame. In thy righteousness deliver me. Incline thy ear to me, rescue me speedily. Be thou a rock of refuge for me, a strong fortress to save me. Yea, thou art my rock and my fortress. For thy name's sake lead me and guide me. Take me out of the net which is hidden for me, for thou art my refuge. Into thy hand I commit my spirit. Thou hast redeemed me, O Lord, faithful God. My times are in thy hand. Deliver me from the hand of my enemies and persecutors. Let thy face shine on thy servant. Save me in thy steadfast love. Our second reading comes from the Gospel of John, chapter 14, verses 1 through 17. Let not your hearts be troubled. Believe in God. Believe also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? And when I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and will take you to myself, that where I am, you may be also. And you know the way where I am going. Thomas said to him, Lord, we do not know where you are going. How can we know the way? Jesus said to him, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me. If you had known me, you would have known my Father also. Henceforth you know him and have seen him. Philip said to him, Lord, show us the Father, and we shall be satisfied. Jesus said to him, Have I been with you so long, and yet you do not know me, Philip? He who has seen me has seen the Father. How can you say, Show us the Father? Do you not believe that I am in the Father and the Father in me? The words that I say to you, I do not speak on my own authority, but the Father who dwells in me does his work. Believe me that I am in the Father and the Father in me, or else believe me for the sake of the works themselves. Truly, truly, I say to you, he who believes in me will also do the works that I do, and greater works than these will he do, because I go to the Father. Whatever you ask in my name, I will do it, that the Father may be glorified in the Son. If you ask anything in my name, I will do it. If you love me, you will keep my commandments. And I will pray the Father, and he will give you another counselor to be with you forever, even the Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive, because it neither sees him nor knows him. You know him, for he dwells with you and will be in you. The word of God.
I remember sitting at what was now like a very clunky desktop computer, right? A huge one with a really big screen. Remember that? And I remember going to mapquest.com for the first time. And then I could put in someone's address and it would let me print out specific directions from where I live to where my destination was. It's a fascinating thing. MapQuest.com. And then I also remember finding other sites that were better than MapQuest. And I remember being in arguments with people, the people who used MapQuest, and then me, who had started to use maps.google.com, right? And people had options, like, right, when those things first were, we had people liked one or the other, right? So, and remember, you would print out pages, right? And if you're going somewhere you didn't really know, sometimes you would print it out with the little teeny map next to it, right? It would say 1.7 miles, take right, and then there would be a little 2.5 by 2.5 map of the specific part of the world you are in when you are traveling that 1.7 miles. And then I remember 10 years ago at Christmas, unwrapping a box, and my MapQuest days were over because I had my own GPS, my own from my mother. It was a great, great present, right? And I opened, I couldn't wait, only to find out that it's a little clunky now. At the time, I don't know if I remembered it being clunky. Yes, I did. Because what does it want you to tell it first? It wants it in the backward, the opposite direction of how we tell directions, right? If I give you my address, I give you the number, and then the street, and then the town, and then the zip code. But your GPS wants it the other way around, right? It wants the town you're going in first, the state. Thank you, the state first. And right, so it doesn't really read your mind the way your mind functions, as I remember thinking when I first tried the GPS, right? But you get used to it. Why? Because there's a voice in this box that tells me what the 12 pages used to tell me. And so I don't have to flip through the page, and I don't have to have the person there either to help me. I can do it all by myself. Me and the voice can get me there. And then, just 3 years ago, I went on Amazon.com and I upgraded and made my life way better with the iPhone 4S. I introduced myself to Siri, my personal assistant. Perhaps you have her too. Maybe she sounds the same, maybe not, depending on our choices, our preferences. But now, if I push the button on my phone that is really always with me, because I have a relationship with the phone and Siri, it's really two different relationships. If I press the home button and hold it, I can ask her to find directions for me. And she will pull up the map feature in my phone on her own. She will find those directions. She'll map it out. I can look while I'm driving, of course, which I shouldn't be doing and shouldn't admit, but it's true. So then there's a map on my phone as I'm driving, and all I have to do is hit start. And she starts talking to me. Travel 1.7 miles, and then take a slight right on 287, as if I didn't know that's where I was going. Here's where Siri gets problems, right? You guys are all with me now, right? Because sometimes Siri wants me to take directions that I don't believe are the best directions. Now, let's go back, because I asked her for directions, and if I knew where I was going, why did I ask her in the first place? It's really the question we should be asking. So I asked her, and I hit start, and so I'm moving, but now I don't like what she's told me. Sometimes she thinks that I should take roads that look like they're closer, but since I'm from New Jersey, and clearly Siri is not from New Jersey, she doesn't know that I shouldn't be taking 287 right now, and it's just easier to climb the mountain in the back road. So I go off, and what does she say?
Say a prayer for him.
She says, sometimes recalculating if I'm really bad. Sometimes it's just silent for a long time. You have to wonder if she's working. She's working, she's fine. She finds that she starts again. She tries to tell me when it's at some point you get, when it's safe, turn around. Right? And so sure, sometimes we get frustrated that when we choose to go the way that we want, and it's not the way that she wants, she insists on helping us find our way back to her way, right? This is the grand frustration of us with our GPS technology today. But here's what I have to say, everybody. We have the world in our pocket. We have the entire world, the knowledge of most of the entire world at our disposal on the interwebs. And we spend most of it finding jokes to pass on to one another, okay? It is in this phone that we carry in our back pocket that is part of an appendage to our lives now. The answer, I don't know, is no longer a valid answer, right? If you're in any room and something comes up and people don't know the answer, within milliseconds, 5 people in the room have their phone and they are looking up the answer, right? And then, since I'm one of those people, I look up and see the other 4 people looking, and now I'm in a race. I want to see if my phone works faster than your phone, not if my brain works faster. It has nothing to do with our brains anymore. It just has to do with whether my computer's better than your computer, right? So I understand why Thomas would ask Jesus for a little more information about where he was going, right? And how they might follow him to get there. It's a reasonable thing to say, I want directions. Could you give me directions there? Jesus offers nothing specific. There's no specificity in this passage at all. So let's try to put some flesh on this very vague conversation that Jesus has with his friends. Let's say that they were going to get Italian ice at Rita's, okay? Because we all know that Thursday was the first day of spring, and Rita gives away Italian ice on the first day of spring. So that's where people went. Didn't matter that it was freezing cold and the wind was bitter. We were getting Italian ice. So let's pretend that Jesus and his friends were getting Italian ice. The sun is out, the ground is wet, and it smells like spring. Plants are sprouting. You can start to see them right above the surface of the earth. The miracle of perennials, I think. Jesus and his friends have decided that they'll be at Rita's for Italian ice. They hop in Jesus' car. There's always room in Jesus' car, they say. I think that Jesus drives a GMC Yukon, the extended version, right? Because they've been known to fit 9 people in his car. So they head over to Rita's, and Jesus has been waiting for the right time to talk to them about when he might die. That's always a hard conversation, right? Death and life after death, saying goodbye. They order their ices, and Jesus got lemon, because it's my favorite. And they have a seat on the curb in the parking lot. If you notice, there's really no seating at Rita's, right? So you have to like sit on the street almost to eat your Italian ice. And Jesus says, hey guys, I just want to talk to you a little bit about my Father's house. In my Father's house, there are many different rooms, is how we heard it today. I've heard in the old King Jimmy, right, it says mansions. It doesn't say mansions, for sure, in the Greek. It might say dwelling places. And Jesus says, if I'm going to end up going to where my Father is, then don't worry, you'll come with me too. I mean, eventually, of course. And they look up from their ices, and Thomas looks confused. And James looks up because he wasn't paying attention. And John isn't paying attention either, but it's because he's watching Thomas's lips turn blue from his ices. Right? And so Jesus continues with the question. You know where I'm going, right? I mean, you know where I'm headed? And Thomas, with his blue lips, says, we have no idea what you're talking about. How can we know the way you're going? And they all reach for another scoop of their icy, right? Jesus continues, there isn't a way, a truth, a life. And life are, well, I am. I mean, if you know me, you know the way to the Father in this case. And Philip looked up from his chocolate ice and he says, well, show us the way to the Father. And Jesus says, I just told you that I'm the same as the Father, and the Father is in me, and I'm in the Father, and if you've seen me, then you've seen the Father. And so I'm so glad you cleared that up. I can see both sides of this very confusing conversation. I can almost hear Jesus' exasperation, right? This deep sigh of frustration that he's been with them for so long. They've seen miracles. They've seen lives changed. Their own lives have been changed. So how do they not see that Jesus is clearly from God? And in this case, he's calling God Father. How can they not see that Jesus has come as a gift from God? How can they not see this yet? Jesus has come to reveal who God is. God with skin on. God who has pitched a tent in our world. God who lives our life. God who walks our path. How can they not see this? And then I can see the disciples also desperate for Jesus to speak a little bit more tangibly. Stop with the metaphors already. I mean, sure, tell us a story, but at the end, break it down when you're done so that we know what the heck you're talking about. Now, I've been living with this text all week, and I'll tell you what, I have no idea how this text would break down into normal speak. Embedded in the middle of this story is a very well-known verse that is used often as a means to define who gets to go to heaven and who doesn't. In English, that verse has been translated, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. In Greek, it is way more confusing. In Greek, if we translate it as is, it would be something like, the way, the truth, and the life is I am. No one comes to the Father except by or with me. What I do know is that we have used that verse as a means of exclusion when it clearly was meant to help Jesus define who he is. It is a passage about God, revealing God through Jesus. It's a passage of inclusion. It's a passage of encouragement. That even when Jesus is no longer with us in the flesh, he can still be found in the way, in the truth, in life. It is a passage about there being enough room for everyone and anyone as long as Jesus is driving. It's a passage that remains vague in its specificity. Jesus does not give Thomas an address to put into his GPS. Jesus doesn't pull out a picture of God from his wallet and show it to Philip. This is what God looks like. And for us who really rely on specificity, for us who want clear directions, for us who long for the easiest, most efficient way, this passage is not satisfying. I don't believe the disciples were satisfied either when they first heard it, and I don't believe the community who it was written for 70 years later was satisfied by this passage. There's no clear, easy way to go where Jesus goes. There's no prescriptive method for understanding the truth that Jesus was. There's no one way to live the life that Jesus brought. And so then I was brought to that great quote that I started the day with, right? Wanderer, your footsteps are the road, nothing more. Wanderer, there is no road. The road is made by walking. By walking, one makes the road, and upon glancing behind, one sees a path that never will be trod again. And the commentary that I've been reading as we've been going through John said that the journey is not an outward one, but an inward one. God is not up there. God is in here. The only way into the reality of who God is to live into the meaning of Jesus, the Jesus life, the Jesus way, the Jesus truth. To discover the freedom to give ourselves away the way Jesus did. That alone is the path to the Father. God is not an external being that we must locate somewhere in space and in time, or recognize. The Father and the Son will come and they will dwell in us, is what I hear it saying. I've heard Jesus say here that he is making his home in me and in you. I hear him saying that in God's home, proverbially, there are many rooms. Some of them are called Nadia, and some are called Peter, some are called Jim, some are called yet another Peter. There are many dwelling places for God. And then God said, I'm going to dwell in you. In my Father's house there are many rooms. I have room. And you have room. And that's where Jesus wants to dwell. In your bulletin, there's a little lilac piece of paper. And for this, we have been offering different reflections, responses to God. During the last song in our service today, you'll have a chance to bring them forward and slip your piece of paper in the slot in our purple box up here, our Lenten box. And so I will give you freedom today with your purple card, because this passage is so vague in its understanding of where God lives, what God wants from us. And so if I were to say to you that you are one of the dwelling places that Jesus was talking about that day when he was eating Rita's ice with his disciples. If I were to tell you, you are one of the dwelling places, what do you say to that? Write your response to that on your purple piece of paper. And then at the last hymn, if you'd like, you can bring it forward and put it in the Lenten box. Would you please stand with me?